Want to bring in CNN senior legal analyst and former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, Ellie Honig. Also, jury consultant Richard Gabriel is here as well. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here. We know that this trial is going to begin. And Ellie, let me begin with you, because the prosecution says they intend to call their first witness, of course, after opening statements, but on Monday, but that they won't tell Trump's team who that person will be until the day before. So what will the prosecution really be looking for out of whoever their first witness is going to be?
Well, you want to start safe and you want to start strong, Laura. You don't want to, you're certainly not going to put Michael Cohen up there. Let's put it that way to start off. You want to, this is your first time you're really showing any evidence to the jury. And so you want to give them somebody who establishes a bedrock foundation of your case. So I suspect it might be a witness through whom they can get in some of the financial records. For example, we know that a key part of this case was the fact that Donald Trump reimbursed Michael Cohen through a series of 11 checks, many, not all, but many of which Donald Trump himself signed. I would want to put those documents in front of the jury as early as possible. You say, this is rock solid evidence here. This is documentary evidence. This is Donald Trump's name literally signed on the line. So that's what I would do in this situation, but you want to be safe and solid.
You know, Ellie, on that point, though, Trump's attorney, Susan Necheles, asked the judge if they could have the witness name. And by the way, this was a really interesting part. Be ordered not to share it with their client. What does that tell you about the relationship, perhaps, between Trump and his attorneys?
Well, it tells us that there's minimal trust, certainly from the judge over to Donald Trump and his team. And I think the reason Donald Trump's attorneys suggested that was to try to get the judge to order the prosecutor to tell him who the witness is going to be. Now, Laura, you know, ordinarily, judges will make prosecutors turn over the names of their witnesses. Sometimes on a Friday, they'll say, okay, who are you calling next week? At a minimum, they'll say, okay, who are you calling tomorrow or next business day? And defense lawyers need to know that because they have a witness list with dozens and dozens of names, but they need to know who they're prepping to cross-examine on Monday. And because the judge doesn't trust Donald Trump, and because maybe to some extent his lawyers are wary of what he'll do, the lawyers now don't have that ability to fully prepare in advance.
You know, Richard, on that point, too, and I think about that as perhaps Necheles was saying, look, if you tell me I can't tell my client, then it's easier for me when I tell my client I'm not going to tell you because I'm not sure what you're going to do with the information. Richard, Judge Merchan is deciding which prior Trump court cases, or what they call a category of like bad acts, could be used as evidence at the trial. So how could evidence like this affect a jury? It's obviously not intended to prove this particular case, but it's useful nonetheless.
Well, Laura and Ellie, you know, one of the main key issues going to be in this case has to do with his intent. And so a lot of times the evidence that comes in against an impeachment is going to be used to show his intent and his fraudulent intent at that. The truth here is that his credibility is going to be the key in here. If I were on the defense team, I'd obviously be trying to convince him not to testify because he's a wild card and you just don't know what he's going to be saying. So, you know, but jurors look at all kinds of nuanced behaviors in order to be able to judge credibility. And his character is going to be on trial here as much as the documentary evidence.
You know, and meanwhile, the prosecutor and me, my mouth, like, Pavlovian type salivated at the thought of a defendant taking the stand, probably for the opposite reasons you're actually speaking about. But the defense, they only need one juror, Richard, to have some doubts. So who do you think Trump's attorneys are now eyeing as potentially sympathetic to their case?
Well, they've got juror number 2, who I think they're looking at. Obviously, here's a gentleman who follows Trump on Truth Social. Mm-hmm. He follows Michael Cohen, too, which is kind of an interesting twist as well. He's read some quotes from Art of the Deal, which always, I think, perks up their ears. But however, the thing I think they're really looking at are the 2 lawyers. They've got 2 corporate lawyers on there. I think they're going to look at them to have some strength and carry some water for them in terms of whether the prosecution has actually met the burden of proof and whether there's this sort of unique theory that they put forth and whether it passes the smell test.
What do you think, Ellie, about this juror number 2? And I also am curious what you thought about the central lawyers.
So I completely agree with my colleague here, the jury consultant. Those are the 3 that I think I would like on the defense side. The lawyers, first of all, the defense here is going to be largely technical, and you want people who aren't going to get swept up in whatever feelings people may have about Donald Trump, be able to say, okay, first of all, did Donald Trump, we know he knew about hush money, but was he involved in the falsification? That's the crime. And second of all, if so, was the campaign finance violation the actual motivation? And then this other juror, number two, the fact that he follows Donald Trump on social media and Michael Cohen doesn't really tell me all that much. I mean, following Donald Trump certainly does not mean you support Donald Trump. It means you want to see what the then president, now former president, has to say. Having read The Art of the Deal, a lot of people read it. It's been around a long time. But I think the overall profile suggests to me somebody who might be sympathetic with the defense overall.
That's a good point. Richard, let me ask you about the emotions that were on display. You saw the weight of the moment. Some jurors got emotional. One of them, who was dismissed, told the court, "I have to be honest. I feel so nervous and anxious right now. I'm sorry. I thought I could do this, but I would not want someone who feels this way to judge my case." So what are the chances that one of the alternates might eventually have to step in? And if they do, who chooses which alternate will do? Is it just an order?
I think the judge has indicated with juror number 1 through 6 that they will be called in order. However, and I think there's probably a good chance that maybe one of them will be used. The truth is that this is one of those really challenging cases. The three of us have been in court a lot. We sort of look at it, okay, let's start the trial. We assume that jurors, okay, I'm sworn in, I'm going to do my job. But the immense amount of pressure and the immense amount of self-scrutiny that these jurors have to monitor with their own predispositions, their own potential biases, and then obviously the pressures of the community and the whole world watching has to really put a lot of burden on them. So I think that does create this sort of emotional environment for a lot of these jurors.
Ellie, Richard, I want you both to stick around. Thank you so much, because attorneys for Donald Trump, as we've been talking about, they are preparing for opening statements in maybe the biggest trial